Good morning and welcome. Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing. I would appreciate if each of you would expand upon your testimony on the importance of restoring funding, staff, and training in the IRS. Starting with you, Mr. Joe.
Mr. Lewis, there's a factoid that I'd like to share, and that is we have calculated that the 1,600 fewer revenue officers that the IRS has now, and this is actually a figure that from 2010 to 2017, they have 1,600 fewer revenue officers. We validated that each revenue officer is able to bring in roughly $2 million each, which would result in over $3 billion of less revenue brought into the IRS as a result of the reduction in those revenue officers. That's striking. So there is no question that if there were additional revenue officers, I know most Americans dread the notion of being audited, but as I pointed out in my oral and written testimony, that is the most effective way the IRS has to collect revenue.
Continue down the line, down the row.
Congressman Lewis, I would comment that GAO should report this spring looking at strategic human capital management at IRS. And what we found was a little disturbing in that given the year after year of budget cuts since 2010, IRS has lost people in critical skills area, including the human capital function, where highly skilled people come up with, do the studies to analyze and find, where are the skills missing in the operation, what skills will be needed in the future. And because no hiring was going on, no training was going on, that function atrophied. As the Inspector General just mentioned, the enforcement area suffered as well, and I would also add that the taxpayer service function suffered as well. Over the years, IRS has struggled to maintain a adequate level of service on phones to answer taxpayer questions. On the enforcement side, audit rates are way down, and while it's hard to quantify any kind of estimates, enforcement revenue has been more or less constant over the last several years at about $50 billion. IRS's budget at about $11 or $12 billion. That alone is a very positive ROI of $4 to $5 for every dollar invested in IRS.
Thank you.
No, there are a number of figures regarding ROI from investment in the IRS. While I can't pin one down in particular, I can say undeniably that this is an organization that could do more with more resources. In my particular organization, I see this in the area of attracting and retaining data and analytics talent, which you might know is probably one of the more sought-after skill sets in the private economy at this time. And as we look forward to a service that hopefully takes greater advantage of data in its activities and operations, that will be a critical capability as we move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Wood?
Congressman Lewis, I can't give you specific numbers with respect to the IRS's personnel involved in large case litigation. I can certainly tell you that when they match up against the private sector, typically in cases involving billions of dollars of proposed deficiencies, that the number of people employed by the taxpayer and used to both build their own case and impede the government's case is far in excess of what the IRS can bring to the table. If you look at the docket in the tax court, I think there are roughly 30,000 cases at any one time. That is the bulk of the tax litigation. And that's what the IRS Chief Counsel's Office is responsible for. And including all that, then you have these massive cases which are hugely complicated, and you need big resources to match up against the other side, and they simply don't have them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Let me recognize the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Smith, to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this